The next portion of Thesara's training was on Icona. In the quiet botanical garden, she could hear the trill of a flying creature that was in perfect harmony with the Icona plants. The sound was gentle and put Thesara at ease. These flying creatures, Thesara was told, also emitted another sound. Typically, it was when they encountered someone new. The unfamiliar spark rhythm and their lack of completed meditation training often meant that they frightened the Icona. Under these conditions, the trill of the creature was one of warning. The semi-sentient plants responded by closing up and sheltering together. Because Thesara had never heard that trill, she wondered what it sounded like. But she enjoyed the calming sound of the soothing trill. It was dusk, and the bioluminescent vines pulsed with light around the meditation pool. Thesara had just finished combat training and retreated there. She found comfort in this setting. The soft sounds of the fluid energon trickling from the plants that produced it, and the sound of the wind through the leaves of the beautiful plants on Icona. Organic life had such an incredible beauty, she thought. There was a pool there with some of the energon the plants produced. In this form, it was not volatile and flammable. There was something about the biology of the planet that made it safe and inert here. Perhaps if it hardened over eons and became crystalline, then exposed to an oxygen-rich environment, it would be dangerous. Thesara knelt by the edge of the pool, arms resting on her knees. Her training blades lay beside her, inert and dull. Valtoris approached without a word, carrying a bowl of folded Icona leaves and healing resin. She knelt beside Thesara, not breaking the quiet. "It is peaceful here," Thesara said. "I find the trill calming." Valtoris looked up at the creature drifting effortlessly above. The creature was a combination of organic and a crystal-like stone. It glistened with the light of the energon-producing plants. Yes, the Lunari and the Icona plants are linked. They communicate with each other to warn of danger and to signify times of safety and peace. When we are present, the Lunari trill is peaceful when the spark near them is settled and calm. In turn, the Icona trust us. The garden was on the hillside. They turned to look out into the valley below, to the harmonious planet. After a brief pause, Thesara said, "The armor listens to me, Valtoris, even when I don't feel worthy." Valtoris turned from observing the Icona to looking at Thesara. It was a searching look, as though she were scanning her. "It listens because your spark speaks with clarity, even through pain," Valtoris replied. "But what if my clarity is corrupted? What if the grief overwhelms me?" Thesara hesitated and looked down. "Every time I focus, I see his face. I feel his spark thrumming next to mine, and I wonder, with all this fury inside me, am I still worthy?" Valtoris dipped her fingers into the resin and dabbed it along the seam of Thesara's injured arm. The glow from the pool flickered across both their faces. "Your question honors the path more than certainty ever could," Valtoris replied. She gently touched the area above Thesara's spark casing. "You ache because you still love him. That ache is not your enemy, Thesara. Let hurt be the space where compassion grows. But do not forget, you are not your pain. You are what you choose despite it." Thesara's optics closed, and her shoulders finally relaxed. She had felt poisoned by her feelings, and wondered if she should be seeking to follow the path. What Valtoris said put her spark at ease. "Hold only the oath in your chest. The rest will unfold," Valtoris said gently. Later on, Zephyron arrived. He met with Valtoris in a chamber with the hillside view. Thesara was meditating, and the pair could see her on a lower level, and the life of the Icona during the night. As Thesara knelt down, they could see the Icona plants reaching out to her. The blue and silver energon tendrils of the plants encircled Thesara's forearms. "I do not question her spark, Zephyron. I question the pace," Valtoris said quietly as they overlooked the meditation chamber from above. The chamber they stood in had marble pillars with high ceilings. The ceiling was glass, and the glistening of the Lunari could be seen through it as they fed in the night. "You fear she grows too strong too quickly," he said without turning. Their words were measured. This night in training had posed several concerns that they were not accustomed to dealing with. Normally, the process was ever so gradual. It took time to build trust with the Icona. It took time to build a bond with the armor. Instead, With the Sara, she had never heard the trill of danger from the Lunari. Even after she was discovered at the wreckage, the Lunari's trill was calm and at peace. Since Valtoris had been the guardian of Icona, there had never been a Cybertronian that arrived to the planet for the first time that had not caused the danger trill. Yes, the Icona follow her like wind through reeds. The armor answers her with perfect harmony. She already stands equal to knights who trained for centuries. Valtoris paused. Power comes before patience, and I see the fire in her eyes when she speaks of the war, of him. Zephyron looked at the Sara closely, as though he'd find the answers to his own concerns in his searching look. So do I. But I also see what tempers it. Restraint, discipline, doubt, Zephyron said. Valtoris left the view and walked over to her garden to tend it. It was a beautiful mix of magenta, blue, and silver, with a mist emitting from several plants. As she arrived at the garden, the plants responded to her. When you first brought her to Icona, I believed it was an elder knight that had arrived. The Icona reacted with familiarity, Valtoris said. Zephyron had also noticed this. As the Sara's mentor, he had seen the Icona react more strongly as he walked with her than when he walked alone. He had also noticed that they responded to her while he walked alongside the transport and she was injured. He thought he had imagined it, but Valtoris had noticed the same. We should discuss these matters with the Elder. He can help us as we guide Thesara. He who knows the ancient scrolls, Valtoris said. Zephyron turned and walked over to the garden as well. He watched her care for the Icona as they tenderly reached for her touch. Yes, let us seek Bastion's counsel once more. These matters may have great consequence. Our actions should be intentional and calculated, Zephyron said. The next cycle they approached the sanctum. It was a rainy day, and the temple was darker than usual, as it was supplied largely by natural light. They took the customary turn from the meditation chamber to the sanctum. Bastion was already expecting them. He had set out a chair for each of them around a table. Bastion had a staff instead of a sword. As this was his knight's armor, it obeyed him. He placed it near him as he sat at the table, and it stood there on its own. The staff and his knight's insignia were a bright blue. Each knight earned the insignia at their knighting, and the color the armor took was reflective of the bond that knight had with it. Bastion, being the eldest knight, also had another insignia on his shoulder. It was one they were unfamiliar with, and had not had the familiarity with him to ask. Valtoris and Zephyron both had one blade holstered at their backs. Valtoris's was magenta, as was her insignia, and Zephyron a bright green. They joined Bastion at the table, where he had several texts and scrolls out. Valtoris expressed her concerns, and Zephyron and Bastion listened. Zephyron did not reply. He wanted to consider what the elder had to say. Bastion, a calculated Cybertronian, took his time in thinking. In the age of knights, she is unlike any I have seen. The prophecy breathes more clearly with each day of her training, Valtoris said as she closed a scroll with deliberate care. A silence lingered in the sanctum. There was once another to whom the Icona reacted so strongly, Bastion said, thinking. It was one of the original 13. Zephyron straightened, and Valtoris looked up from the scroll she had been reading. Bastion stood from the table and went to a shelf on the far wall. He withdrew one, its spine marked with a symbol Zephyron and Valtoris had never seen. Aeon Prime, Bastion said, thumbing gently through its etched pages, the silent flame. He found the passage and turned it toward them. It is said he walked among the living worlds, not as a god, but as a steward. The Icona vines bloomed in his presence. The Lunari did not warn of him. The armor, it is written, hummed in his silence, not in submission, but recognition. Valtoris stepped closer, optics narrowing slightly. The Sara may share his spark, Bastion added. The others looked doubtfully at Bastion, then exchanged a glance at each other. Not in origin, Bastion said, but in rhythm, in intention. Valtoris finally spoke, her voice low and clear with a sense of understanding. She offers herself to the Icona, not to command, but to join. Yes, Bastion said. Her spark is still, her fire quiet. She moves not to dominate, but to preserve. She does not seek control, she seeks connection. Bastian turned another page. An illustration, abstract but resonant, showed Aeon Prime with open hands. Energon vines encircled his forearms. Appearing fiber optic in nature, the vines were the tendrils of the Icona plants nearby reaching out to him, floating around his arms. When Zephyron and Valtoris looked down at the image, it was eerily similar to Thesara. When she went into meditation, any nearby Icona would wrap themselves around her in the same manner. Aeon is not known for battlefield victories. He was remembered for what did not die under his watch. It is he that discovered the power of the Icona, and the nature of the ancient primordial metals that would become the armor. Those that followed tried to mimic his actions without the same intention in their sparks, Bastian said. The rain outside was soft now, pooling in the garden paths. The light began to come through into the chamber more clearly as the clouds broke. Zephyron spoke again. Then perhaps it is not the power of the armor that draws to her. Perhaps it is the sincerity of her offering. Bastian nodded slowly. She offers her mind and her soul to the Icona, and they, recognizing a kindred rhythm, offer themselves in return. Zephyron looked toward the garden beyond the sanctum wall where he had seen Thesara meditating many times. Each occasion, the Icona had wrapped around her forearms as they did for Aeon Prime. It was interesting, Zephyron thought, that all the time he had been training others to form a connection with the armor and the Icona, it was based in settling their spark rhythm. What he needed to learn, and then teach others, was instead to reach out to the Icona in meditation, in sincerity and seeking connection. All this time the knights had been training, this portion of forming the connection had been lost to time. Zephyron smiled slightly as he admired his student. Then he remembered the last verse of the prophecy, that she was to die. He felt his spark sink. He then realized that the conversation was continuing behind him. We do not question her bond with the armor, nor the Icona. She remains a knight in training at the moment. She feels deeply. That can cloud the spark, Valtoris said. But it can also awaken it. Pain has not closed her spark, it has opened it. She protects even when no one watches. That is not vanity, it is vow, Zephyron said, taking pride in Thesara as he spoke. And if the armor remains loyal to her, that means her heart still follows the path, Bastian said, sitting once more. The ancients were wise to design such a test, power that abandons the unworthy. Bastian was of course describing the tendency of the armor to fail once a spark no longer follows the path. It became inert and could no longer be wielded. I remain concerned that she has learned another deeper connection to the armor and the Icona. Would they choose to follow her still, if she should wander from the path? Valtoris asked. Silence followed, as they were all unsure of what might come to pass. This was a new connection, not seen since Aeon Prime. He did not abuse it, but would it be possible for Thesara to? I do not believe she would abuse it, Valtoris, Zephyron said. The silence that followed was due to Zephyron having a small concern in his spark that mirrored Valtoris. Valtoris believed Zephyron was seeing only what he wanted to see, and Bastian was measuring everything altogether. Valtoris then said, There is only one way. We must test her. The armor and the Icona follow her, but where does her spark truly lead? Zephyron, surprised, looked at her. Bastian stopped reading and also looked at Valtoris. Summoned to the sanctum for an unknown reason, Thesara thought carefully as she took each step through the forest. Several knights had commented on how quickly she had earned the bond with the Icona and with the armor. Many also seemed weary of the turmoil within her, as they were all meant to follow the path of tranquility. The forest near the temple was also organic and beautiful in a different way. Thesara appreciated how the temple was constructed to complement the forest, not displace it. As she entered through the ancient gate, a bell sounded. She passed by the meditation chamber, seeing others there. Then she turned toward the sanctum and waited at its entrance. When Bastion the Elder emerged, she dropped to one knee and crossed her right arm over her chest with her hand in a fist, a full knight's bow. Thesara, thank you for coming, Bastion said. Yes, your grace, Thesara responded. Please stand and follow me, Bastion said. She did so and entered the sanctum. It was a curious place. Ancient writing on the walls and a library of scrolls on the shelves surrounded them. The blue lanterns were present, but there were also warmer lights in the desk areas for reading the ancient materials. Thesara looked around, taking it all in as she followed the elder through the sanctum. He then turned when they arrived in a small chamber. Do you know why we have summoned you, Thesara? Bastion asked calmly. Thesara nodded and said, You doubt me, your grace. Not your skill, not even your intent, but we must understand your foundation, Valtoris said, entering the room with Zephyrin. They stood around her while she was in the center of a chamber with a Cybertronian floor. When you feel your brother's shadow, what rises in your spark? Vengeance or compassion? Zephyrin said. Thesara paused to think. At first, vengeance. But I have learned to breathe through the fire. He is not mine to change, but he is mine to love, even from afar. The path does not ask us to be unfeeling. It asks us to be unwavering, she replied. They considered her response. Then Bastion lifted his arm above the center of the room. There was a pillar that arose from the ground. Upon it was the spark crucible, an ancient relic. Upon it was the spark crucible, an ancient relic. Thesara, take this relic in your hands, Bastion instructed. Thesara stepped forward and took it. She felt as though there was something pulling her through space and time. She found herself on an unknown alien planet. There was a fragile species there. She knew somehow many things about the species, as though she had been there for ages. Thesara also knew, deep in her spark, a devastating force was on its way to enslave the species that were technologically inferior. As though she had known about the situation and the incoming danger long before it arrived, she knew what to do. As the attempted conquerors landed, they saw her. Thesara prepared for battle. It seemed that it was eons ago that she had been training as a knight. She had no memory of being summoned to the sanctum. Thesara stood her ground as a small vessel left the main ship and landed before her. From the vessel exited Zephyrin, her mentor. Shocked, she lowered her weapons. Zephyrin? What are you doing here? She asked. Her mentor stood, looking more battered than last she saw him. His demeanor, normally confident and tall, seemed slouched slightly. With an unusual tone, he spoke. Hello, Thesara. We require your assistance. Thesara wondered if he was there to join her in battle, but then, why would he be asking for her assistance? You see, this planet will be used as a training facility for the knights. Bastion has ordered it, Zephyrin said. Thesara processed what he said slowly. Used as a training facility. What right did the knights have in using a primitive planet? Zephyrin, there's a population here. Your presence and mine are disturbing it. They are not technologically advanced enough for flight or space travel, and they are unfamiliar with our biology. We are breaking our oath. Thesara had not disarmed herself. Other than lowering her weapons, she stood quite still. Zephyrin sighed, then he added, Thesara, the Decepticons have destroyed Icona. The words hit Thesara like a kick to the chest. Icona, the beautiful and peaceful planet that brought such harmony to the knights and to Thesara, was gone. It was a symbol of why their protection was necessary to preserve such ecosystems. She remembered the calming trill of the Lunari that flew above. Thesara shut her optics momentarily as the words washed over her again. The Decepticons. The Decepticons destroyed another planet. And Valtoris? Thesara asked. Zephron broke his gaze to her and looked down. He shook his head. Thesara bowed her head slightly, but did not waver. Thesara, he continued, we need to train more knights. The time has come for us to leave the shadows as Bastion has ordered. We need to stand against the Decepticons, or everything we stand for and protect will be lost. Thesara considered him, then said, But we stand for protection of planets and species. How could this new directive involve interfering with this planet so severely? Zephron frowned with a look that said he was hearing exactly what he expected, but not what he wanted. This planet has the primordial elements involved in the creation of the knight's armor. With more knights being recruited, we also require more armor. And, with the planet Icona destroyed, we may need to use this planet to grow more Icona from the little that remained on the temple. It has a similar atmosphere, and they should take here, Zephron responded. Thesara silently stood, listening to him speak. This was quite literally unbelievable, that her own mentor, or Bastion, would order a world to be sacrificed. They were suggesting becoming the very thing they swore to protect against. Zephron, what you are suggesting is conquest. It is forcible interference with the natural evolution of the way of life of this planet for the needs of the knights. One planet has been lost, and a sacred one at that. But to come to this world in search of minerals and land would be a direct violation of the oath. Thesara spoke softly, but definitively. Thesara, if we wandered from the path, the armor we bear would no longer answer to us. If we are not defying our oath, we are protecting it. With basic supplies, we can restore much of what was lost. And we can take a stand against the Decepticons, Zephron said. Thesara was still shocked. She did not know why the armor would still respond to them, but that matter today was merely academic. We can never restore what was lost, Zephron. And as to your armor, I do not know why it responds to you. We do not take sides in Cybertronian battles. We only serve to protect primitive life. Our power and capability is far too great to use for conquest. Thesara's mind was racing. Her mentor was asking her to defy everything he and the others had taught her. They had already done irreparable damage to this planet by revealing themselves. Now he was suggesting that they use it to mine and seed. Thesara, we must not lose this war, Zephron said urgently. Thesara raised her eyebrows at his outburst. Perhaps the loss of Icona and Valtoris was still recent to him. We must prevail in restoring our ways, in order to protect planets yet to be lost, Zephron said. You are suggesting we sacrifice this planet, the one the knights assigned me to protect, to save the knights of the temple? Thesara said softly. Zephron was silent for a few moments, then said, One world in exchange for saving thousands, as one knight should be willing to sacrifice themselves to save thousands. Sacrificing one world is sacrificing billions of lives, Zephron. Thesara's blades were glowing and pulsing brightly and rapidly. One knight offers their life to save others. They do not demand innocent lives to be sacrificed, not for any reason. Zephron tilted his chin up, realizing she would not be persuaded. Thesara, these are my orders. I am to fulfill them, as are the knights that have arrived with me, Zephron said as he motioned above him to the ship. You may attempt to do so, Thesara said, raising her blades once more. I was assigned to protect this planet from all invaders and conquistadors, Cybertronian or otherwise. As a knight, it is my duty to protect them, and I will do so to the final beat of my spark. This is our way, Zephron, even if you and the others have lost sight of it. Zephron looked at her and said, Very well. He took his own blades out, and 3 other knights joined him in the battle. They fought fiercely. Thesara defended their attacks with great skill, but when she would get the upper hand on a knight, she would hesitate in killing them. Again and again the knights came for Thesara, and again she subdued them. Interestingly, despite being severely injured, they would get up and continue fighting. She, on the other hand, was struggling to recover as quickly when she was struck. True to her duty, she continued fighting, and after the third time of gaining the upper hand on one of the knights, she saw that the only option would be to attack his spark. They were unrelenting, and she was the only thing that stood between them and the planet's population. As she took the knight down, she placed her blade through his spark. Without much time to consider what she had done, she continued battling the other two knights and Zephron. While she still felt an ache in her chest regarding Zephron, she remained focused. Her mission was to protect the planet, not have an existential crisis. Another knight down, and then the third. Now it was only Zephron that remained. Zephron, this is not the way of our people. Please, 3 knights have been lost to this battle. Allow me to speak to Bastion. Our people must not seek conquest and disregard the life forms we swore to protect. Thessara was injured, but still on her feet. Zephron looked at her and sadly shook his head. I'm sorry, Thessara. This we must do. It is you that are mistaken. This one world will save thousands. This is the only way. He approached her for battle. Having been uninjured thus far, Zephron was much better suited to fight than Thessara was in her current condition. With one uninjured arm, Thessara would be fighting with only one blade. They went back and forth, but she was hesitant to hurt him. Back and forth they fought. She kicked him and punched him in order to spare herself the task of wounding him. He got back up quickly, as she had another wound to add to her collection. In a brief break in the battle, where she had thrown him back, she dropped to her knees and looked at the population of aliens she protected. Their lives were in her hands. If she fell, so might they. The knights were willing to kill one of their own for military advantage. They would likely be willing to kill members of this species as well. Kneeling on the battlefield, she found her spark rhythm. The armor was true to her. She pulsed with it, and together they stood. Zephron was running at her. She called her blade into her right hand and prepared for one final blow. As Zephron focused on his target, she was able to find hers. In the last swing either of them took, they stood in a battle embrace with both blades having found their targets. Zephron and Thessara both received fatal wounds. The scene melted away, and once again Thessara found herself in the sanctum. She had dropped the spark crucible on the pillar before falling to the ground. Where was she? What had happened? She felt severely drained and still ached from the many wounds she had sustained. Thessara, a warm voice said. Someone was sitting her up, and she struggled to awaken. Ugh, Thessara grunted as she sat up. It is all right, Thessara. The feeling will pass. With some time in the garden, your energy will be restored. Valtoris spoke this time. Valtoris? Valtoris was dead, wasn't she? Valtoris? Thessara said. She began looking around. She was in the sanctum. She had been summoned there because Bastion wanted to give her a test of some sort. They were afraid of how quickly she was bonding with the armor and the Icona. Thessara, are you all right? Zephron spoke. She looked at him. He was holding her up. She frowned. It was a simulation, Thessara. None of what you encountered there has ever come to pass. The character the Crucible selected is based on how close you are to that individual. It is not a reflection of who they are or what they would do, Bastion said. Thessara considered this. As she spent more time in this reality, things became more clear. They sought to test her commitment to the oath, even if her mentor rejected the ways of the knights. Rather clever, really, she thought. They assisted Thessara to her feet. She was still weak. The Crucible was a technology of the ancients. It takes energon from the subject to create the trial. This is why you are weak. You felt the blows and wounds as though they were genuine. And as the scene progressed, the Crucible took more of your energon to continue projecting it, Bastion explained. Valtoris and Zephron were holding Thessara up. Thessara, you have done well. You may be learning our ways quickly, but the armor and the Icona believe you to be worthy. As do I, Bastion said in his slow, wise voice. Thesara was surprised to see a hint of a smile on the elder's face. After helping Thesara to a recovery room, Valtoris and Zephyron returned to the sanctum with Bastion. She's still struck, even knowing it was you. She chose the mission, the planet, Valtoris said. Valtoris seemed much more convinced after learning about Aeon Prime, and after witnessing the Crucible's test for Thesara. Despite her inner turmoil, time and again, Thesara had demonstrated her worthiness. That is the oath to protect, even if it costs her life or her kin, Bastion said. He gave a slow, approving nod. Looking off into the distance, Zephyron said, I saw no rage in her strike, only sorrow. He was both troubled and comforted by what he had witnessed. Even as a knight in training, Thesara was so true to the oath that she would not waver from it even if he asked her to. Zephyron remembered the last verse of the prophecy that Bastion had shared with him. More and more it seemed she was in fact the subject of the prophecy. She thought you were a traitor, that the knights had abandoned the path, and she stood against us, for a world that does not even know her name, Valtoris said. Would you have done the same, at her age? Bastion asked Zephyron. Zephyron paused and thought. No, I would have obeyed, he responded. As a young knight, I did not have the courage or fortitude within myself to stand against the others. Then perhaps it is time we stopped asking whether she walks the path as we did, and begin watching the path she's carving, Bastion said. Valtoris looked to the set of armor that sat near the edge of the chamber. While Thesara had been holding the crucible, the armor had glowed brightly. Now, it had just a faint shimmer with 3 knights nearby. Thesara's spark resonated with the armor more deeply than the armor resonated with the combined sparks of the 3 elder knights. In the center of the knighting hall was a bright blue flame. Its blue light was steady and eternal. It was never fed and had never failed. It had been there since the beginning, silently offering light to the hall. The chamber entrance was lined with knights, shoulder to shoulder. As Thesara walked through the hallway into the circular chamber. As part of the temple, it had the same stone and metal structures with blue Cybertronian writing and inscriptions on the walls. The chamber within was lined with columns. High on the columns were Icona plants. They sat still, waiting. Thesara walked into the chamber. Near its entrance, she knelt and gave a full knight's bow. Come and kneel before the silent flame, Thesara, Bastion instructed. He, Zephyron, and Valtoris stood at an altar above her. Between them was the silent flame. She knelt before it and bowed her head. When you are ready, Thesara, you may proceed, Bastion said. Thesara took a moment, then recited what all knights did at their knighting ceremony, the Oath of the Silent Flame. Before the silent flame I pledge to shield those who cannot shield themselves, to preserve the course of life untouched by conquest or greed, to walk unseen, unheard, unknown, until I must be known, to stand between the innocent and the fire, even when the fire bears my name. I shall not seek glory, nor dominion, only balance and the freedom of those who dwell beneath alien suns. I will not bend to fear, to rage, or to vengeance, only to the path, the flame, and the life that must endure. Should my spark flicker, let it fade in service. Should my path be severed, let it be by sacrifice. My life I yield, not for glory, but for peace. I am the quiet blade, the unseen shield. I am a knight of the temple. She then bowed deeply, with her head contacting the stone floor. The knights lining the wall unsheathed their weapons and held them before their chests vertically. Before Valtoris and Zephyron stepped down from the altar to continue the ceremony, they were interrupted by Thesara. Bastion watched her with curiosity. Zephyron tensed, as though to intercede, but Bastion placed a hand on his shoulder. She began speaking to the silent flame. The fire within me must be guided, she said. Her voice was calm, not empty, but resolved. My grief cannot speak. My rage cannot lead. The silent flame flared just once, rising a full span before settling again. Bastion, Zephyron, and Valtoris stood near the altar. This was not a customary portion of the knighting ceremony. The knights lining the hall kept their place despite Thesara's unexpected action. They all watched and waited. The silent flame became larger and brighter. Thesara then said, "In silence I will see more clearly. In stillness I will strike more truly. I will speak again only when peace returns, and my spark is without storm." Zephyron took a half step forward. He wanted to kneel beside her, to speak gently and remind her that silence was not demanded of her. Bastion had not removed his hand from Zephyron's shoulder as they watched. Then Thesara bowed forward fully, lowering her head to the smooth stone floor beside the flame. When her head touched the ground before the silent flame grew to immense size, swirling and burning brightly before receding. In response, the knights standing shoulder to shoulder knelt, as was customary for a vow to the silent flame. The elders recalled the prophecy once more. She speaks in thought, not voice nor word. They turned and met each other's gaze. They had never shown Thesara the prophecy. They did not want her to act differently or to try to fulfill any destiny, but instead to simply be herself. The problem was, the more she was simply being herself, the more in line with the prophecy she became. Zephyron, recalling the fate of the subject, struggled more with his conscience each time she revealed another prophecy trait. Thesara stepped back from the flame and re-entered the kneeling position. Bastion came down from the altar. Zephyron and Valtoris stepped down to join Bastion. Valtoris placed a necklace woven with Icona plants over Thesara's head. Then Zephyron stepped forward. "You were born with a voice," he said, "but you choose silence. You were shaped by pain, yet you offer peace. You carry the fire, and you carry stillness." He raised his sword to one of her shoulders. "By vow and by witness, by spark and by steel, you knelt as Thesara, knight in training." He shifted the blade from one shoulder to the next. "Now rise, as Stillknight, knight of the temple," Zephyron said. She rose. As she did, the silent flame narrowed into a single vertical beam, piercing and pure. A low harmonic pulse radiated from her chest. As the pulse traveled, so did a gust of wind. The Icona vines and plants shimmered outwardly in waves, their bioluminescence responding in a rippling light echo. Stillknight's armor pulsed in a single tone of perfect resonance. A stone corridor just off the knighting hall still held the pale blue glow of the silent flame dancing through the arched entry. The corridor is dim otherwise, and rain patters on the windows. "I've never seen the flame move like that," Valtoris said. "Nor I," Zephyron added. And the Icona responded to her knighting. "It seems they were waiting for her." "She is what the first lines of the prophecy speak of," Valtoris said. The three elders walked slowly through the corridor, heading toward the sanctum. The energy in the chamber behind them still seemed to hum in their sparks. Bastion's staff clicked softly against the stone floor. He had not spoken. "We have never shown it to her," Zephyron said. "And yet she walks it," Valtoris replied, word for word. As they passed beneath the sanctum's arched threshold, the ambient light lifted. The Icona vines lining the walls shifted, silent, alert, as if they too were listening. "She speaks in thought, not voice or word," Zephyron recited. Bastion's optics did not lift. He set the staff beside the central table and unrolled a thin metallic scroll, but Valtoris stepped closer. "If she walks it, do we send her where it leads?" Valtoris asked Bastion. Bastion considered the question carefully. "The next chapter of this war will be fought on Earth, and Earth, by fate or chance, has called for a knight, one ready and one willing." "The Decepticons, they are what brings out the fury in her spark. Should we really send her there?" Valtoris asked. Zephyron's voice was firmer now. "Again and again we doubt her, and she continues to prove herself. The path isn't for those without fire. It's for those who carry it and do not burn others." Valtoris looked at him, then nodded slowly. "There are times," Bastion said at last, when fate makes the decisions for us. Zephron stiffened. He knew Bastion was preparing to speak of the verse. Valtoris, who had only ever read what had been etched on the walls of the temple, did not know what lay beyond. Bastion noticed the tension in Zephron's posture, the restraint in his optics. He understood. And so, after a quiet moment, Bastion moved to a shelf and pulled a different scroll, a more complete one. He placed it before them and gestured for Valtoris to read. Zephron stood beside her. Together they read the first lines of the prophecy, available to all, then the new ones Bastion offered only to them. Yet shadows deep may cloud the spark, and oath may fracture in the dark. She'll stand where self and silence war, not fallen, broken, then something more. Her brother lost, yet not forgot. She strikes the wound to save the lot. In choosing pain, her spark shall fade, a night once more, her oath repaid. As Valtoris read the final verse, an expression of shock, verging on disgust, filled her face. Stillknight is to die? Valtoris asked. We've been concerned that she will abuse her power, that she might form a bond too deep with the armor that might allow her to leave the path and still wield it. Now you share with us that it is her fate to die? Valtoris was shaken. It was not usual for her to have a flare like this, but they met for counsel in a setting where it was necessary for them to voice their concerns. Otherwise, they would simply do as Bastion said, and not discuss and consider the options. Zephron sat in a nearby chair and touched his hand to his eyebrow. Valtoris looked over to him. He looked ashamed. You knew. You knew we were preparing her to die, Valtoris said softly. Zephron nodded, pain etched into the lines of his face. I had hoped she might lead us, that she might be the one to rise. Yes, I thought she would lead us out of the shadows, Valtoris echoed. To die protecting a world in your charge is the ultimate fulfillment of the Knight's oath, Bastion said gently. Stillknight will not die in vain. Her death will bring peace. Valtoris sat slowly, her tone bitter. I believed the prophecy was about a leader, one who would carry us forward into the rebirth. Instead, it speaks of a sacrifice. She is more than a warrior, Zephron said. She is the embodiment of the path. She leads already, without title, without command. Her presence draws the armor and the Icona. She leads by nature. We must not be disappointed in the history that was once written. It will come to pass. That Stillknight, Knight of the Temple, will have an honored death is something we can all be proud of, Bastion said. She is to play a large part in ending this war. This is a war like none before that has destroyed our home planet. We Knights have ended wars through the eons when those wars threatened the life of the planet. Cybertron was never in our charge. It was the world scattered with primitive life we were assigned to guard. We should be proud that our newest member will bring this devastating war to an end in a way that honors the Knights, our place, our oath, and our history. Zephron did not reply immediately. The Knights have lived in shadow long enough, he said. The galaxy sees us as myth, or worse, forgotten. Stillknight is the first spark in eons to rise without ambition, Valtoris said in a low voice. She doesn't reach for the armor, it comes to her. That kind of power doesn't belong in silence. It belongs in the light. And yet, Bastion said, it is the silent flame that burns longest. He rolled the scroll shut with careful precision, as though the ancient words might shift under the weight of grief. Then he tucked it away, 1,000 years of silent prophecy sealed in metal once more. We believe she is the end of a story, Bastion continued, but perhaps she is the beginning of a new one. The prophecy is not a conclusion, it is a threshold. Zephron rose slowly to his feet, tension in every motion. What is the purpose of prophecy if not to prepare us? Is it incomplete? Is there another? We walk blind into a future we may yet shape. If we tell her, Bastion said gently, we take away her freedom. She must walk the path not because she was instructed to, but because it is her nature. Valtoris looked down, quiet for a moment. And yet we send her, knowing she will not return. No, Bastion replied. We send her knowing that when the moment comes, she will not hesitate. The chamber fell silent. The only sound was the soft rhythm of rain. Zephyron stepped to the tall window, watching droplets slide down like the tears he refused to shed. Bastion turned to the window, his back to the scroll. Hope is not gone, he said. But we do not rise because of prophecy. We rise when the path demands it. Behind them, the Icona vines shimmered faintly. A quiet pulse, silver blue, rose from the chamber's edge, spiraling gently toward the vaulted ceiling. The mist drifted like memory, unnoticed, yet unmistakably alive. It was a pattern recorded only once before in the temple's ancient memory, when Aeon Prime first walked the grounds and laid the stone of the sanctum. And now it had returned. The prophecy was not ending. It was only just beginning.